His hand brushed against mine, and it felt like fire meeting gasoline. I knew it was wrong. Every cell in my body screamed to walk away, but my heart, no, my loneliness, begged me to stay. The dim light of the studio cast shadows on the walls as the rain fell hard outside. I remember the sound of my own breathing, fast, uneven, guilty. When he leaned closer, my wedding ring felt heavier than ever before. It was like it burned against my skin, reminding me of the vows I was about to betray. Yet in that instant, temptation drowned out reason. And before I could pull myself back, I let go of the one thing that had always kept me grounded, my faithfulness. That night, I made a mistake that would tear apart the man who loved me more than his own heartbeat. But I also learned something that would change me forever: how love, when it is real, does not just survive betrayal, it redeems. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to appreciate every single one of you watching. To all my amazing subscribers, thank you for supporting and fueling this channel. You are the reason stories like this find life. And to all my new and returning viewers who are yet to subscribe, I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button. It truly serves as the energy that keeps this channel alive. Do not forget to share your thoughts in the comments section right after this short hook. I want to hear what this story makes you feel, think, and reflect on. Now, let us go back to where it all began. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I live in Austin, Texas. I am 35 years old, a mother of two beautiful children, Lily, who is 8, and Jack, who is 5. I have been married to Daniel Mitchell for 12 years. He is the kind of man most women pray for: patient, loyal, and incredibly gentle. But even the best hearts can become distant when life gets heavy. Daniel is an engineer, quiet by nature, and lately, his silence felt louder than words. Between work deadlines and our busy home, we started living like roommates instead of lovers. Our conversations were replaced by nods, our laughter by sighs. I worked as a real estate agent, constantly around people, constantly smiling. But inside, I felt empty. I missed the spark, the thrill, the feeling of being desired. And in that fragile space of emotional hunger, I made room for something I never should have. It began innocently, like every mistake does. I joined a gym nearby, mostly to release stress and feel better about myself. That is where I met Ethan Cole, a 28-year-old fitness trainer with the kind of charm that makes you forget where you are. He had dark brown hair, a deep voice, and a smile that felt like a compliment. At first, it was harmless. He would tease me about how I hated leg days, and I would laugh and roll my eyes. But laughter has a strange way of filling emotional gaps. One afternoon, after a long session, I caught myself staring at him longer than I should have. He smiled back, and that moment became the beginning of something dangerous. Over the next few weeks, our conversations grew personal. He asked about my life, my husband, and I, foolishly, shared too much. I told him how distant Daniel had become, how I felt invisible in my own marriage. Ethan listened with the kind of focus Daniel had stopped giving me. It felt intoxicating. One evening, after class, he offered to walk me to my car because it was raining. The sound of the rain on the pavement, the closeness of our umbrellas, the smell of his cologne, it all blurred my judgment. I felt something stir inside me, something I had not felt in years. It happened a week later. A Friday night. Daniel had taken the kids to visit his mother out of town, and I stayed home because of an open house the next morning. Ethan texted, asking if I wanted to grab coffee after work since I would be alone. I said yes. We met at a quiet cafe, and the conversation was effortless, too effortless. I laughed, he listened, and before I realized it, we were sitting too close. When he brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, I froze, but I did not stop him. Later, we went for a drive. I do not even know why I agreed. The car felt like another world: no husband, no guilt, no kids, no responsibilities. Just two people craving connection. When he parked near the lake, the moonlight reflected off the water. He looked at me and whispered, "You deserve to feel wanted." Those words shattered the last bit of strength I had. I told myself it would be just one kiss. Just a moment of escape. But that one kiss turned into something I could never take back. It was slow, desperate, and heavy with emotion, filled with everything I thought I was missing. But when it was over, when the rush faded, reality hit me like a wave. My body trembled, not from pleasure, but from guilt. I stared out the window, my heart pounding with regret. Ethan reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I felt sick, disgusted at myself. I went home, showered for hours, trying to wash away what I had done. But no amount of water could clean my conscience. The next morning, Daniel came home with the kids. He smiled when he saw me, hugged me, told me he missed me. His touch burned, not because of passion, but because of shame. I could barely look him in the eyes. He noticed something. I could tell. His eyes lingered on me longer than usual, searching for something. He asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired. But deep down, I knew he could sense it, something had changed. Over the next few days, I tried to act normal, but guilt eats you alive quietly. Every laugh felt forced, every hug felt stolen. At night, I would lie beside him, listening to his breathing, and wonder how I could ever tell him. Then one evening, as he kissed my forehead before bed, I broke down. Tears poured down my face, silently at first, then uncontrollably. Daniel asked what was wrong, and I told him it was nothing, but he knew. That was the beginning of the unraveling. The silent distance. The questions he did not ask but desperately wanted to. And I knew, the truth would not stay hidden forever. The days that followed felt like walking through thick fog. Everything seemed normal from the outside, but inside, everything was distorted. I went through the motions of life, packing lunches, folding clothes, smiling for the kids, but behind those simple gestures, guilt sat heavy on my chest. It was not just a secret anymore. It was a shadow that followed me everywhere. Daniel and I shared the same bed, but there was a cold distance between us that words could not fix. He would roll over to face the other side at night, and I would stare at the ceiling, listening to the sound of his breathing. Sometimes, I reached for him, hoping he would take my hand, but he never did. His silence began to scare me more than his anger ever could. He had changed. He became quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that made me wonder if he already knew. It was a Sunday morning when I noticed the real shift. Daniel was in the kitchen making pancakes for the kids, humming to himself, but when I entered the room, his smile faltered just slightly, almost unnoticeably. He asked if I wanted coffee, and I nodded, unable to meet his eyes. When our fingers brushed as he handed me the cup, I froze. He did not. He just turned away, as if that small contact did not matter anymore. The children played on the floor, laughing, and for a brief moment, I saw what I was destroying. Our little family, our sanctuary, our years of love. And suddenly, that one night of weakness felt like a curse that kept replaying in my head. Every time Daniel looked at me, I felt like he could see it written all over my face. My guilt was not silent, it screamed through my body language. I began avoiding eye contact, overcompensating with fake smiles, and filling silences with meaningless chatter. It only made things worse. One evening, after dinner, Daniel sat quietly at the dining table long after everyone else had gone to bed. I walked over to clear the plates, and he looked up at me with eyes I could not recognize. They were tired, red, and heavy. He said softly, "Sarah, are you happy?" The question hit me harder than I expected. My lips trembled. I said yes, but even I could hear the lie in my own voice. He nodded slowly, his gaze dropping to the table, and whispered, "Then why does it not feel like it?" I had no answer. My hand shook as I picked up the plates, pretending not to hear him. That was Daniel. He did not accuse, he did not shout. He simply felt things deeply and carried the weight silently. That silence was worse than rage. Over the next few weeks, he grew more distant. He would come home later, sit outside in his truck for a few minutes before entering the house. I could hear him sometimes, breathing deeply, almost as if he was preparing himself for another night of pretending. I started having panic attacks. Every time his phone buzzed, I feared it was someone who knew. Every time he looked at me too long, I wondered if he had found out. The guilt was eating me alive. It happened on a cold Thursday night. Daniel had worked late, and I was sitting on the couch, staring at our wedding photo on the wall. We looked so happy, so young, so sure of forever. Tears burned my eyes before I even realized I was crying. When he walked in, I stood up. My chest felt tight. I did not plan to say anything that night, but guilt has a way of spilling out when silence becomes unbearable. "Daniel," I said quietly, my voice shaking. "There is something I need to tell you." He did not move. He just looked at me with those calm, patient eyes, the same eyes that once looked at me on our wedding day with absolute trust. That was what broke me. I began shaking uncontrollably. My words tumbled out in fragments. "I made a mistake. I hurt you. I do not know how to undo it." He just stared, his jaw tightening. His hands were trembling slightly as he said, "Who?" That one word shattered everything. The air in the room became heavy. My lips trembled as I whispered the name. "Ethan." Daniel stood still for a moment. His expression went blank, as if his mind had frozen. Then, without a word, he walked out the door. The sound of the door closing behind him was louder than any scream. I waited for hours, sitting on the floor by the door, crying until my body ached. My phone stayed silent. Midnight came, then 1, then 2. I called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. When I finally heard the front door open, I looked up. His face was pale, and his eyes were red. He had been crying. That was the part that broke me completely. Daniel was not the kind of man who cried easily. He walked past me, straight to the bedroom, and said nothing. I followed him, desperate, apologizing over and over. He turned to me, his voice low but steady, "I do not know who you are right now." Then he slept on the couch that night. For the first time in our marriage, we were in the same house but living in two different worlds. I lay awake, staring at the empty side of the bed, remembering his warmth, his laughter, his trust, all of it slipping away because of one reckless moment. Days passed. We barely spoke. He went to work earlier, came home later, and when he was home, he focused only on the kids. The silence between us grew so thick that even breathing felt like breaking it. I tried to reach out, to explain, to apologize, but every word felt too small. There is no language that can fix the kind of pain betrayal causes. One night, I sat on the porch alone, the wind cold against my face. I heard the creak of the door and turned around. Daniel was standing there. His voice was tired, cracked, but calm. "I loved you so much," he said quietly. "I thought I knew you." Those words crushed me. I wanted to beg for forgiveness, but I knew I did not deserve it yet. He deserved time. He deserved honesty. He deserved the truth in full, not pieces. So I told him everything, how lonely I felt, how the attention blinded me, how it was not about love but weakness. He listened in silence. His eyes glistened in the dim porch light. And when I finished, he said nothing. He just nodded and went back inside. That silence became our reality for the next few weeks, painful, raw, and uncertain. One afternoon, I found a note on the kitchen counter. It said, "I need time to think. I am staying at my brother's." I sat on the floor, holding that note, shaking. I thought it was the end. That my mistake had finally broken us for good. But somewhere deep inside, a small part of me still hoped. Because despite everything, I knew Daniel's heart. I knew his love ran deeper than words. Still, I did not know if love would be enough this time. The house felt hollow after Daniel left. Every corner of it carried his presence, his laughter, his scent, his silence. The kids asked where their daddy was, and I told them he was visiting Uncle Ben for a few days. I could barely hold it together while saying it. Every night, after tucking them into bed, I sat on the living room floor staring at my phone, hoping for a text that never came. Each hour felt like a punishment, a reminder of what I had thrown away for one moment of weakness. The guilt never left. It clung to me like a second skin. I stopped going to the gym, stopped wearing makeup, stopped trying to smile. I could not stand my reflection. I saw a stranger, a woman who destroyed her own home. It was nearly 2 weeks later when I heard the sound of his truck pulling into the driveway. My heart started racing, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I stood by the window, watching him step out. He looked tired, older somehow, like he had aged years in just a few days. He came inside quietly. The children ran to him, and he hugged them tight, tears filling his eyes as he kissed their foreheads. I stood there in the corner, silent, afraid to breathe. When his gaze finally met mine, there was no anger, only exhaustion. "Can we talk after the kids go to bed?" he said softly. I nodded, too nervous to speak. The hours crawled by. I bathed the children, read them a bedtime story, and kissed them goodnight, but my mind was spinning the entire time. When the house grew quiet, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, staring at a mug of untouched coffee. I sat across from him, unable to stop my hands from trembling. He looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "I spent these last days trying to hate you," he said. "But all I could think about was how much I still love you." My throat tightened. Tears fell before I could stop them. "I will not pretend that it did not break me," he continued. "It did. It tore something inside me that I may never fully get back. But I keep asking myself, do I want to throw away 12 years of love, laughter, and family because of one moment of failure?" I wanted to interrupt, to plead, but he lifted his hand slightly, signaling me to let him finish. "I thought about the woman you have been," he said. "The way you held me when I lost my dad. The way you sacrificed your own dreams so I could chase mine. You made a mistake, Sarah. A terrible one. But I do not believe you stopped loving me." I broke down completely then. My entire body shook as I whispered, "I did not stop. I just lost myself." He nodded slowly, tears finally falling from his eyes. "Then let us find ourselves again. But it will not be easy. We will have to rebuild everything: trust, intimacy, friendship. It will take time, maybe years. But I am willing, if you are." I could barely breathe through the sobs as I nodded. "I am willing. More than anything." Then, for the first time in weeks, he reached across the table and took my hand. His touch was warm, hesitant, but real. That single gesture felt like the first thread stitching our broken hearts back together. The weeks that followed were painful, but different. We started going to marriage counseling every Saturday. The first sessions were brutal, raw honesty, tears, and awkward silence. But the more we talked, the more I realized that healing was not about erasing the past. It was about learning how to live with it and still choose love anyway. Daniel admitted that he had been emotionally absent long before my mistake, that he had stopped listening and noticing. I admitted that instead of communicating my loneliness, I let temptation fill that space. It was not justification, it was confession. We agreed on one thing: our marriage could not go back to what it was. It had to become something new. One night, after putting the kids to bed, we sat on the couch, both quiet, watching the rain outside. The same sound that once witnessed my mistake now seemed to wash away the residue of it. Daniel took my hand again, just like he used to, and whispered, "I do not know how long it will take, but I want to try. I will spend the rest of my life proving that I am worth the try," I said softly. He smiled faintly, pulling me close. For the first time in a long while I felt safe. Not because everything was perfect, but because we were finally facing the storm together. Months later, on our 12th wedding anniversary, Daniel surprised me with dinner at a small restaurant we used to visit when we were dating. The place had barely changed: same soft lights, same scent of baked bread, same cozy tables. As we sat there, he looked across the table at me and said, "Do you remember the first thing I told you when we met?" I smiled through tears. "You said I had the kind of smile that could start over the world." He reached for my hand, holding it gently. I still believe that. I still believe in us. In that moment, I realized something powerful. Grace is not pretending the wound never happened. Grace is choosing to love someone in spite of it. It is the courage to stay when leaving would have been easier. When we went home that night, I watched him sleep beside me, his arm wrapped around my waist, and I whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. Not because everything was fixed, but because love had survived the fire. It has been 2 years since that night that nearly destroyed us. Our marriage is not flawless, but it is stronger than it has ever been. We talk more, we listen deeper, and we forgive quicker. Sometimes, when I pass by the lake where everything went wrong, I stop and take a deep breath. Not in regret, but in reflection. That night taught me that love is not just about passion or romance. It is about grace, the kind that humbles you, heals you, and makes you new again. I hurt him deeply, yes. But through his forgiveness, I learned what real love truly means. It does not just stitch the broken pieces together, it creates something even more beautiful from the scars.